Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I began noticing changes weeks, if not months, before this, but at first I brushed them off as insignificant. They seemed trivial, just a few extra messages and late meetings. Of course, everyone has busy periods, right? But this wasn't just about being busy. When someone looks you in the eye and makes up a story about a work event on the weekend, it signals a deeper problem, not after 19 years of marriage. Knowing all of Grace's quirks and habits, I started picking up on her subtle signs. She would get absorbed in her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The screen would go dark the moment I turned toward her. She had a repertoire of pre-made excuses to step outside during dinner, always with that bright smile and too sweet tone she had perfected, acting as though I didn't see through her game. I understood, but I stayed silent. Typically, I observe from a distance when faced with problems I plan to address later. Grace was fortunate that I was preoccupied with a work project, one that required more physical effort than mental focus. 3 days spent on calculations and adjustments gave her some freedom, or so she thought. That's when I found the final piece of evidence. One evening after dinner, we were in the living room when she stood up to pour herself a glass of wine. Her phone buzzed on the couch beside me, and the screen lit up. The message read, "I already miss you." The sender was unknown, but the meaning was clear. Instead of confronting her right away, I kept quiet. In the past, I might have reacted with anger or punched a wall to release the pent-up frustration. But I had learned to control my emotions. That's exactly what I did, laying the groundwork for something far more satisfying than a petty argument. The first step involved surveillance, executed with such skill that my former engineering professors would have been impressed. I installed several small, low-grade cameras throughout the bedroom, carefully disguising them. These budget devices were inexpensive but functional, streaming footage directly to my laptop. I needed to make sure nothing raised her suspicions. Grace remained carefree, too absorbed in her fantasy to notice the wires I had hidden behind the bed frame over the past few days. I also crafted a special device with a spring mechanism designed to be placed under the mattress. Building this device was a labor of love. I set it to activate with a delay, allowing enough time for the bed to be in use. And then, boom, the ceiling met its rival. It wasn't just about causing harm. I knew it might result in broken bones, but for me, it was more about the betrayal, the shock of it all. I wanted them to believe they had a private sanctuary, only for me to turn it into their worst nightmare. I wanted them to fear me. I needed her to understand the consequences of destroying the life we had so carefully built together, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In the following days, Grace became predictable. No significant changes occurred. She continued with her usual indifference, weaving her lies, confident I would believe the story about a colleague named Madison who constantly invited her for evening drinks. "I won't be late," she said one evening, kissing me on the cheek as I nodded, placing the key on the kitchen counter. Her perfume lingered longer than usual, expensive. Curiously, it was a scent she hadn't worn for me in quite some time. "Of course," I replied, carefully hiding my thoughts, keeping a stone-faced expression as cold as the coffee machine beside us. As soon as she left, I went back to tightening the screws on my little device. Every turn of the key felt like a final adjustment, tightening the noose on her naive little story. The next phase had begun, the ruse. I arranged a trip, claiming that the company needed my presence in California for a week to present a new prototype. I remained calm, pretending to be annoyed about the trip. At dinner, when I informed Grace, she didn't press for details, just nodded, sipping her wine. "Oh? Another work obligation?" she asked, looking away as if uninterested. Her feigned concern almost made me laugh. "Yes," I sighed, skillfully dragging out this charade. "Shouldn't take more than 4 days, maybe 5 depending on how quickly we wrap things up. I'll keep you posted." She smiled. A smile that reminded me of the old days, back when she thought she was in control. I had the sudden urge to snap the fork in my hand. By the time we reached the airport, There was a noticeable lightness in her step. She waved from the driver's seat, radiating warmth and tenderness. But as she drove off, I noticed my hidden camera by the door had started recording, capturing her irritating left turn towards Charles's house. Conveniently, I was still nearby. I parked by the curb and killed the engine, my eyes fixed on the phone lying on the passenger seat. The live feed flickered for a moment before stabilizing, revealing the home I had painstakingly built with her. From this angle, I could see our bedroom, where Grace was meticulously preparing the stage for her little act. She thought she had everything under control, using the usual excuses about work perks, late meetings, and constant stress, as if I couldn't tell that something was wrong, as if I didn't know her routine better than she did. But tonight, she believed I was out of town. That was the most humiliating part. There was a twisted satisfaction in knowing how easily she had deceived me, and how naive she was about what was to come. Suddenly, the front door swung open, and there stood Charles, the charming realtor himself. With a smug grin on his face, he acted as if he truly belonged there, as if he had a right to be in my home and my bed. A cold, calculated satisfaction washed over me. Let him enjoy these last moments of confidence. They ascended the stairs, her laughter resembling that of a schoolgirl eavesdropping in the boys' locker room. Disgusting. I enlarged the video to full screen, my finger hovering over the remote beside me. Not yet. Timing is everything. I had put too much effort into this moment to rush it. They started undressing, laughing between whispered words I didn't want to hear. It was always the same pattern. Fleeting pleasures, temporary thrills. They were completely unaware. Grace approached the bed as if it were a ritual, as if it were a routine for them. Perhaps it was. She even had the audacity to toss one of the pillows onto the floor, the one I had chosen for her last year because she liked the design. That infuriated me. They both climbed into the bed, entwined and undressed. That bed. My bed. I clenched my jaw and gripped the remote tighter. Just a few more seconds. Grace let out a soft moan. Charles whispered something in her ear, which made her laugh again. Another shallow, empty laugh. I imagined how they thought the night would unfold. They'd enjoy their fun, sleep off the guilt, and I would return in a few days, none the wiser. I almost smiled. My finger pressed down hard on the button. The bed suddenly jerked upwards, flinging both of them into the air like a toy with a spring mechanism. There was no time for a scream. Their bodies collided with the ceiling, and the sound reverberated throughout the room. A sickening, wet thud echoed as flesh hit plaster. If either of them had been able to grasp the madness of what was happening, it would have been too late. Grace was the first to hit the ceiling. Her body twisted unnaturally, her shoulder striking the ceiling at an awkward angle, fully dislocating it. A faint crack resonated in my ears through the phone. She dropped to the floor like a rag doll, landing face first. She screamed, but it came out as a choking gasp as she clutched her shoulder, her entire body trembling with pain. Charles fared little better. The force of his lift slammed the back of his head directly into the light fixture, shattering it. A sharp crack filled the room as his chest collided with the edge of the bed. He collapsed next to Grace, gasping for breath, barely able to move. I swung the car door open and stepped out into the cool night air. My walk toward the front door was slow and deliberate. There was no need to hurry anymore. Rushing had been part of the thrill. I pushed the front door open as if it were just an ordinary evening. The sounds of their cries and groans floated down from upstairs, muffled by the closed bedroom door. As I approached the staircase, I deliberately kicked off my shoes, one by one. I ascended the stairs with calm determination, the sobbing growing louder with each step. A wave of peace washed over me. All those nights spent enduring her ridiculous excuses were finally at an end. The lies were over. I turned the doorknob, finding it unlocked, not that it mattered, and swung the door open with such force that the handle slammed into the wall. Grace's eyes met mine, blood staining her teeth. She whimpered my name, fear etched on her face as she tried to crawl away. No, I had no desire to talk. Charles, that fool, groaned, barely able to move, lost in his own pain. One hand clutched his broken ribs tightly, his body trembling as he struggled to breathe, each breath shallow and ragged. I stepped into the room, towering over the wreckage of their affair, feeling a deep satisfaction. Grace tried to crawl backward with her one good arm, her broken body sliding across the floor. Her arm hung limply from the dislocated shoulder. "Please," she gasped. I pulled out my phone and opened the hidden recording. There it was, undeniable. Every moment captured, every betrayal preserved forever. I held the phone out so she could see the video, relishing the silence. Grace's eyes widened in horror as she realized what was on the screen. She understood what it meant, what I was offering. She shook her head, tears mixed with blood streaming down her cheeks. "No, no, no, please, Brian." Her voice broke into pitiful sobs. Her career, her reputation, everything she had built was on the verge of destruction, shattered in mere moments. Charles, still too dazed and injured to fully comprehend, glanced at me. Even through his pain, I saw the realization dawning on his face. His jaw dropped in silent terror as he stared at the phone. There were no words, only a faint groan of despair. I let the silence stretch out, watching as the weight of the moment crushed them both. Grace opened her mouth again, perhaps to beg or scream. I felt complete indifference as I slid the phone into my pocket, not even glancing at her. I headed straight to the closet, where in one corner lay her collection of designer handbags, neatly stacked next to her shoes. All those luxurious things she had accumulated over the years. One by one, I pulled them out, throwing them onto the floor in a chaotic pile. "Brian, please don't do this," Grace stammered, her hands trembling as she tried to lift herself from the floor, barely managing to rise a few inches. I didn't turn to face her. Instead, I took out a lighter and flicked it. A small flame flickered softly, casting a warm glow on the mess in the room. My satisfaction was cold and calculated. This was only the beginning of their suffering. "You know," I said, my voice steady and almost disturbingly calm, "I've had quite a busy day. While you were otherwise occupied, I made some important financial decisions." Grace's eyes widened in shock as the realization hit her, and a dreadful understanding appeared on her face. "That's right, dear. Our joint accounts? Emptied? The house? It's now in my name alone. Your car? Sold. Everything we built together? All mine?" I watched as Grace's face turned pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. She tried to respond but could only stifle sobs. Charles lay motionless, his eyes darting between us as he finally grasped the seriousness of the situation. "You have nothing left, Grace. No money, no house, no support. And you," I said, turning to Charles, "are in just as much trouble. I wonder how your clients would react to a video of you in bed with a married woman." Charles's face drained of color. "You can't do that!" he squeaked, clutching his side as if in pain. "Oh, I absolutely can and will," I replied with cold certainty. "Unless, of course, you both prefer to face something even worse. In that case, I suggest you disappear." "You're lucky I'm even calling an ambulance," I said, pulling out my phone, dialing 911 as I kept my gaze fixed on them. "Yes, I need an ambulance. There's been an accident." After the call ended, I looked at Grace one last time. The woman I once loved now lay crushed, pathetic on the floor. All I felt for her was contempt. "Goodbye, Grace. I hope it was worth it." I left the house, letting them deal with the consequences of their choices. As I got into the car, I heard the rising wail of sirens, but I was already looking ahead, ready to start a new life, free from betrayal. Filing for divorce was a mechanical process, simple and devoid of emotion. I approached it like any business matter, with precision, efficiency, and absolute resolve. Grace didn't even try to resist. What could she say? Her body was battered, her spirit broken. When I saw her in court, I barely recognized the woman standing before me. The once confident gleam in her eyes was gone. I didn't feel a shred of compassion. She was just an empty shell, and honestly, that was more than she deserved. It was almost absurdly easy. She didn't contest a single point. The affair, documented in detail on that dating site, sealed the outcome before the battle even began. The divorce was finalized so quickly that I signed the papers as carelessly as canceling a gym membership. As for Grace, she left with only what she had on, I drained all the accounts, leaving her with nothing. No car, no house. And speaking of the house, I sold it too. Too many memories tied to a life that turned out to be a lie. Now I had a new place downtown, my own space to start fresh. A modest apartment located above a cafe. It's the kind of place where anonymity reigns, where people respect each other's personal space and avoid interfering in each other's lives. Everything here is functional. I found solace in this cold detachment. Waking up in a place unburdened by the weight of past memories was liberating. No longer did I wander through places that were filled with traces of her scent. Finally, I felt free. And you know what? I started dating again. I met women who weren't interested in my past, women who were blissfully unaware of Grace. They didn't need to know about it. I cut all ties with anyone connected to her, friends, acquaintances, anyone who might try to pull me back into the swamp of reconciliation or forgiveness. I was done with it. That chapter of my life wasn't just closed, it was erased. A barren wasteland. For the first time, I existed without her presence looming over me. And the best part? That video. A small, sharp reminder of the pain, something I could hold on to, ready to surface at my will. Not to watch it again, of course. I didn't need to see it another time. I had seen it enough. It had served its purpose. No, just the knowledge of its existence was enough. I realized that Grace knew I still had it. It's amazing how one recorded moment can define a person's entire life. She would never feel safe again, always fearing that the video might surface, perhaps at her workplace or during an important interview. A few months later, I sent her a small reminder. Nothing too elaborate, just a snapshot of me at a bar, smiling like someone in control. I had my arm around a woman named Elisa. We had met a few weeks ago, but she wasn't the focus. The message was brief and clear. 2 sentences. "You'll never escape this," I wrote. In the envelope was the photograph along with that note. I imagined Grace in her filthy motel room, opening the envelope, looking at the picture, probably trembling, wondering if today would be the day I destroyed her life with a single click. She brought this upon herself, didn't she? Now she could lie in the chaos she created, with her broken ribs and shattered spirit. And so I took the final step in my revenge, the video. I sent it out to various social groups. Why keep such an exclusive video to myself? This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.